In 2005, when I was 22, I was living in a shared rental house with a friend who I'd met at school, and one day he brought home a 4-week-old kitten who he had named Dylan, after Bob Dylan, who we were both big fans of. Having grown up with cats in my home for pretty much all my life, I was very excited to get to know him, and immediately I formed a special bond with him. He would spend most of his time in my bedroom, sleep in between my legs, and he was fascinated with batting my face. A year or two later, when my housemate told me that he was going to be moving out with his girlfriend at the time, and with our current lease coming to an end, I was worried my time with Dylan would be coming to an end too. But one day my housemate said something along the lines of, "Well, obviously I assume you'll be wanting to keep Dylan, seeing as he spends all his time with you." And of course I said yes, so all of a sudden I had a cat. So Dylan moved out with me, and for a few years I rented various flats and houses while doing my best to hide the fact that I had a cat from various landlords, because finding a landlord that allows pets was almost impossible. When he was a young cat, he was just obsessed with food. He'd be so excited about being fed all the time. Up until this point, we had kept Dylan indoors as we were living in a block of flats.
Dylan, do you want some biscuits? Do you want some biscuits?
But at this age, he started showing signs of really wanting to go outside, and he managed to escape once or twice whenever a window or door was left open. When I was about 28 and Dylan was about 6, I decided I'd had enough of living with other people, and I rented a small ground floor flat on my own where Dylan would be able to go outside. And he really enjoyed it. He became this different cat in a way, just so happy. Every day when I got home from work, he would always come and greet me.
Hello.
He'd do the same even if I went out at night too. If I got back at some ridiculous hour in the morning after going out drinking, he'd be out there on the street waiting for me to return. Sometimes I'd walk to the local shop and he'd walk with me and wait around outside and then walk me back home again. One time I went to a friend's house party who lived a few roads away from where I lived at the time, and Dylan came with me to the party. He literally just came in the house and joined everyone. I had to keep taking him home throughout the night as I was worried he'd get lost and wouldn't be able to find his way back, but he'd just jump out of the cat flap again and follow me back to the house party.
You hungry?
He was never much of a playful cat, but he did have his moments. In 2012, I met Rhea, and Rhea and Dylan very quickly formed a strong bond too. In 2015, I started making woodworking videos on my YouTube channel, Rag and Bone Brown. And Dylan would often join me in the workshop while I was working, and he soon became very popular even with people who hadn't met him. Often people would put timestamps in the comments for whenever Dylan appeared in the video so that people could skip to those bits in the video. Honestly, I think he was far more popular on the channel than I was.
What's up? Do you want to go in? I shut the back door, so I'll let him in. He might want some biscuits.
At this age, he liked sitting on his cat tree, looking out of the window and watching the world go by, and eating his favourite treats.
Do you want some treats?
Dylan loved being outdoors, but in our previous house he always seemed a little bit on edge. I think because we lived in a built-up area, so there were loads of other cats who'd come into our garden. This next video has to be my all-time favourite. This is Dylan after taking a reluctant bath because he had just jumped onto some wet oil-based paint. That was a fun day.
What are you doing?
In 2019 we moved to a bungalow in the countryside and suddenly found ourselves with a huge garden, and Dylan really loved it out there. He was really relaxed as there wasn't really any other cats around. Sometimes we'd do this thing where I'd sprint across the garden and he'd run after me. I'm not sure why, but it was great. This is Dylan chasing me up the garden.
You ready for a race?
He also loved hunting. Sometimes he'd bring back mice. At one point it was happening almost on a daily basis and we'd feel terrible for the poor little things. He also loved catching dragonflies. Sometimes you'd hear a distant crunching noise and you'd find him munching on one. He caught a few birds too. One time he brought a swallow into our house through the cat flap, and the poor thing was bleeding and pooping all over our kitchen before we finally managed to usher it out of the window. Hopefully it survived. In 2021, Ria and I got married, and Dylan was there in spirit and in picture frame, in his best bow tie.
It's you! Look!
As Dylan got older, he became more of a lap cat. But he still had his playful moments. If you were busy working, Dylan had zero respect for your personal space.
Hello.
Feeding him yogurt from a spoon was one of my favourite things to do. I always found it funny how he couldn't stop licking his lips afterwards.
Okay. Good.
On Friday 22nd of April 2022, we noticed that Dylan had laboured breathing. We took him to the vet, who carried out x-rays and various tests to determine that he had heart disease and early signs of kidney failure, and we made the difficult decision to have him put to sleep at the age of 17. We fed him Dreamies, his favourite treat, and he went peacefully in my arms, and on the following day we buried him in one of his favourite places in the garden, which he so loved to roam. But he'd had an amazing life. He was always such a happy and healthy cat. We had many adventures together, and it was a pleasure to grow old with him. He was just the best companion, and we'll never forget him, and the house doesn't feel like a home without him.